GRAMMY U rep for Los Angeles. I've met many of you before. So how many GRAMMY U members are here? Cool. And the rest of you are going to join tonight, right? Cool. So for those of you that aren't members, we bring up close and personal with your favorite artists. We also give you access to cool events like sound checks and film screenings and help you learn about the music business from industry professionals. Membership is only $25 a year, which is pretty good, or $50 until you graduate. Also, we have 2 exciting events being announced this week that are happening next week, but we're going to announce them on our Facebook page, so go give us a like and check there, and then you'll be able to go. Cool. Pass it back to Daniel.
Cool, thanks. So first and foremost, I'd also really like to thank the Los Angeles Film School for hosting this event tonight. They are gracious partners who lend us this space and kind of help us with all this. I'd also like to thank Google and Google Plus for coming out and supporting the Hangout that's happening right now. So we hope you guys are checking out the cool interaction that we have going on there. And then also, of course, we want to thank Stephanie LaFera and Matt Colon for getting Steve and Kaskade here tonight. And of course, Kaskade and Steve Aoki. Cool, so we're actually going to try and make this a really social evening. So if you have your phones, pull them out. We've got all kinds of things that in different hashtags and places to follow. So I'm actually going to bring up our social media specialist for the Recording Academy, Lindsay Gabler, to talk a little bit about our social media for tonight.
All right, thanks again, guys, so much for coming out tonight. For those of you who don't know, we're actually broadcasting this publicly on Google and Google Hangout tonight. So we're really excited so everyone can see. Here at the Recording Academy, social media is such an important part of what we do, especially because of the fact that this past Grammy Awards, the 54th Grammy Awards, was the most social event in television history to date, which is a huge, huge accomplishment. And so, when Daniel came to me with this event, we are always coming up with crazy ideas, and we said, you know what, let's try to hang out. Especially being a national organization, we want to make sure that, everybody who participates is included. So we actually want to introduce some of the people who are with us tonight. So let's get up some of the students that are with us. Who do we got first?
Smile.
Let's see. GRAMMY U San Francisco.
Woo!
You guys want to go around and say your names and what school you're from?
I'm Brian from Pyramide.
I'm Zach from Pyramide.
I'm Kunal from UC Berkeley.
I'm Jason from Expression.
I'm Alvin from Expression College for Digital Arts.
Riza from Expression College for Digital Arts.
Brittany from Expression College for Digital Arts.
Jason from Expressions.
Dave from Expression College for Digital Arts.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, so much for being with us. Now we have students in Chicago. What's up, Chicago? Yeah. How you guys doing?
Great.
You want to go ahead and say your name and what school you're from?
Hey, how's it going? I'm the GRAMMY U rep here in Chicago. I'm Ramo, and I go to Columbia College.
Hey, guys. I'm Daniel Turner from Columbia College, Chicago.
Hey, I'm Nicole Go. I'm from DePaul University.
I'm Emily. I'm from Columbia.
I'm Max, and I go to Loyola University in Chicago.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later in the interview tonight. So if you guys are on your phones, make sure to tell your friends that they can watch it at Grammy365.com/hangout. The hashtag is #GrammyUpClose. And make sure to follow @GrammyU for all of the latest and greatest updates. So now I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight, and LA Chapter Governor Robin Nixon.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Are you ready for a fantastic evening? All right, so, boy, have we got a couple of big superstars for you. Do you know who we have? Am I going to make you wait? So why don't we get right to it? Can we please have Kaskade and Steve Aoki? Thank you. I think we should have a few more of those. One more round of applause, please. All right, so thank you. And thank you very much to the Grammys for hosting this. And thank you, Lizzie and Daniel and Erin and all of the staff behind this. I mean, what a great turnout. And thank you all for coming. So, I don't know why we're laughing, but I'll just sit down.
Hey, no, switch mics with me. Mine's
okay. Hello. So, we're going to get right to it then. We have some questions for you, and I guess what is going on with this room is that a lot of you out there want to make music and want to learn about how these guys did this, and some of you are aspiring producers and DJs yourself. So I guess the first question to both of you is, you know, did you choose to do this, and what was the path, the journey, as you know, from before? You know, you both earned the title of superstar DJs and producers. So how did you get there? What kind of influences and music were you listening to get there? Why don't we start with you, Steve?
Ooh, microphone. Well, I grew up listening to straight edge hardcore when I was in my tweens. And that, you know, being part of that community lended a lot of tools as far as being in a band and learning how to play guitar, singing horribly, you know, the whole band spirit of just, you know, the group think, always getting together with your friends and playing music. So I grew up in that kind of unconventional world of I don't know if you can call it songwriting, but you know, that's what it was. And you know, eventually I started a label in my when I was 19, when I was going to college, and I was still in bands. And I started DJing when I moved to LA, and I shouldn't. Is this better? And then when I moved to LA, then I got into production for dance music. Like a couple years after I started DJing, so in like 05 I started remixing, and that was really the start for me to get into dance music. Was, you know, having the stems of bands on my label, which, the first of which was Block Party, and I remixed one of the songs, Helicopter, with a friend of mine that already knew how to produce music in Pro Tools. So he kind of schooled me at that time as far as the technical aspect of producing. I was there just songwriting with him, and then over the course of a couple of years, you know, I started producing on my own. And then eventually started working on this album that just came out this year, which took like 3 or 4 years to eventually finish. And then, you know, long story short, you know,
somebody told me that you were listening to a lot of punk rock. Is that
that's the real start of?
Right.
I mean, because that kind of community, it's all about being proactive in your community. So when you're a hardcore kid, there wasn't that many growing up in my city.
Right.
So we were all proactively involved, doing zines, being in bands, or trying to be in bands.
Right.
You know, like it was like all of us, like all my friends would pick up instruments, play horribly, but we still did it. And it was that idea of being able to accomplish those things that seem so far away from you.
Right.
And having a community that supported that.
So you knew when you were starting out, even back then in the basic, you know, bands, it wasn't the DJ thing for you at that time, perhaps, but you knew that you wanted to be a performer and an artist. And how did you take those influences and discover the DJ route? What was the
DJing came almost, it was like I kind of stumbled into it. I moved to LA. I started DJing at a late age. I'm a late bloomer. I started DJing at like 22. You know, like most kids are starting in their teenage years, but you know, I was in a different mindset altogether. And when I started DJing, I was DJing what you would call hipster parties. I mean, we weren't part of the rave scene at all. I didn't know who Doc Martin was at the time, you know, in 03, 04, Tiesto, or it was like, oh, Interpol's coming through, we'll have them DJ.
Right. So
or yeah,
very
or Block
diverse
Party,
music. Right.
It was like bands coming to have a party, and it wasn't about the DJ. And I was a horrible DJ. I mean, I was the worst DJ imaginable. But when we throw these parties and everyone have a good time, and we were all horrible DJs. All
Moving on from that.
But that, like here we are. We're on Sunset, right across from Amoeba Records. I literally started DJing 2 blocks away up here on the street of on Cahuenga, in a bar that holds like fucking like 80 people, like the front row. And, it was that intimate and fun.
That's some definitely. This is up close and personal, so we're getting some really background on how this started. How about you, Kaskade?
I was born in Evanston, which is a suburb right outside of Chicago. And for those of you
anyone
don't
else
know,
out from near there?
Yeah, a few Midwesterners here. The Chicago people, what's up? Columbia, what's up? So,
yeah, you know what? Hello to the online community.
Yeah. So in the 80s, when I was in high school and this new music was emerging, this new genre, it was actually quite accessible. They had radio shows, specialty shows. WBMX was a R&B station that had, or like a pop station that had house mixes on the weekend. Right. And teen clubs were a big deal back in the 80s. I don't even know if they still do that now. I guess we go to raves now instead of clubs. Right. But back then it was very common. So I'd take the train into the city, hitch a ride with my friends, whatever. This is before I started driving, and go into the city and listen to what these guys were doing. And soon after that, I mean, I was intrigued instantly. I was like, oh man, this is, I got it. I understood what they were doing, but the music was different than anything I'd ever heard.
So were you listening to, like Steve was obviously listening to a lot of different music. Did you just know dance music was your thing, or were you listening to some other stuff?
No, I mean, I had 2 older brothers, so I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin and The Who,
Right.
But they had good taste in music. They went to college and they came back and they brought the Smiths and The Cure and New Order, and I got turned on to that stuff really early. And then there was that kind of weird crossover moment with house music where Art of Noise was making records, and Kraftwerk, they were making records that the tempo was very similar to house music. And the DJs in Chicago were blending this stuff with early house records and acid house records. And I was just intrigued. The whole scene was very inviting, and I was a music lover. Right. And I just kind of dove it right in from there. And
so you were with vinyl back then, or?
Yeah, it was vinyl. The arguably one of the first dance music record stores, Gramophone, was not too far from where the club that I was going to was at. So I was hanging out in the city, going to this club, and then buying records, I mean, back then, I'm laughing because kids complain now about buying an MP3 for $1.99. Back then, a domestic record was $4.99, and an import was $8.99 or $9.99. So it was for somebody in high school, this is a lot of money when I only got, $20, $30 a week.
And of course, you were probably having to carry very heavy boxes of vinyl to your gigs, right?
Well, I wasn't gigging in high school. I was just buying this stuff.
Okay.
And back then, my parents had a record player because this is what vinyl was still the format that you bought music on. I can remember oh man, no, cassettes are cool. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that, man. I'm not into cassettes.
Do you still have a record player?
Yeah, of course.
Do you have a record player, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, of course I do.
I asked that because everybody's carrying around USBs right now.
Well, it's funny because when I think of record players, when I listen to records, not turntables. When I think of turntables, I think of DJing. When I think of record players, I think of before DJing. I mean, I'm a big vinyl collector. So through high school, in college, I was collecting lots of vinyl. I mean, lots of vinyl, and I had a record player.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I would play just the music to myself. And my friend, I wasn't DJing.
Audiophile.
But I think of turntables. I think of it, even though it's the same thing. It's
right. Sure.
different context, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing that the Technics have stopped producing their turntables now. It's a sign of the times. So you're both performers, and obviously this musical journey from your youth and then aspiring to be performers and ultimately DJs. Both of you are very good and successful producers. So how would you say your path into producing? Because it's one thing listening to music and then saying I would like to perform that, but it's a very different leap to say I'm going to make music. So how did that happen? Let's again start with you, Steve. And
well, I started as a duo called Weird Science. That's how I got into production. And as I was saying before, I really learned a lot from my production partner at the time, Blake Miller. And then I later got into my own production. But I feel like I started maturing more as a producer when I started working with other producers and learning, you know, their different ways of you know, looking at a song structure. You know, they're different sample banks. It's just like just different like mind frames of producing music. You know, going to the studio with Layback Luke or Afrojack or Tiesto, like the last couple of collabs I've done have really expanded my you know, the way I've produced.
He's not name dropping there, by the way.
Yeah,
he's really doing that.
Busted. Sorry guys. I'm sorry.
Last week. That's okay.
Well, let's just say that the my album, I struggled with my album for a long time. You know, it took me to finish one album. Took me like 3 years, a long time to finish this album. I would go to a song, I would consider it done, and then 6 months later, I would restart and go, no, it's not done, and then get back into it again and not find that sound I'm looking for, change the melody, change certain structures, and then leave it alone, then come back to it a year later. I mean, it really was a struggle to finish everything. But when I started working with other people and getting insight, it really helped me, and to help me find closure too, because like some of these tracks I did with some of these songs, like No Beef, I wrote No Beef with Afrojack in my studio here in LA. We did that song in 4 hours.
Wow.
You know, like, and then there's certain songs on my album that took me like literally like, oh my, countless hundreds of hours of time of reworking and going back. And
so do you go in with a vision, or do you find it in the song?
I mean, it's case by case.
Right.
I think also, you know, I started off doing remixes, so, you know, working with a palette of music, it's so much easier. Right. I mean, plus you have an idea and a direction that's already been laid out. You have the parts, you have all these different things to work off of. So sometimes when I work on an original, I look at it like a remix.
Right.
You know,
that's a good foundation when you've got the restraints of someone else's music, and
working with vocals actually helps me. You know, like when I did Control Freak from my album Wonderland, Black Star came in the studio, and I had a very raw, stripped down beat that I wrote, and I just had him kind of rapping and singing over it, and I would just, like, he would just come up with ideas, and we'd just take out different hooks. I'm like, oh, this is a great hook, let's save that, and then I would write to that hook. Right. I would write underneath that hook, and then it developed into a song. So I mean, it's different processes.
So some of those mistakes become the journey. And how about you, Kaskade? The leap from music fan, performer, perhaps the beginning, to then producing. How did that happen?
I was buying these records, crates of records. I wasn't DJing very much. No one would hire me.
Not now.
And then I just started slowly buying pieces of gear, 909 and 808. I bought my first sampler, an Akai S3000, and I started kind of wrapping my head around how people were making these early house records, because at first I was like, how are they making these sounds? What is that? It's not a drummer. This is a machine making this music. But for me, it made a lot of sense. I was never like a team player. I didn't play on the football team. I was a skateboarder. I was always like the kid in the corner alone. So for me to sit in front of a machine and figure out how it worked with my background in music, I was like, this is something I can really understand. It made sense to me. I'm like, cool, I could be the one-man band. I could sit here with the sampler. I could sit here on this drum machine. I could program for hours and have a good time and call it a night. But those machines I found very difficult. And I remember a big thing for me is when Pro Tools introduced Sound Designer 2. When it was a card that I got in my my Mac 7100. This was a big deal back then. I like leveraged every credit card I had to get a 7100 at the student bookstore. It was like $2,000 or something. I was like, I'm going to hell and I'm never going to get out of debt, but I'm going to make records, damn it,
See, there's hope.
But so debt's bad. Don't do that.
Don't get into too much debt.
Yeah, don't do that. That's a bad story to share.
Up close and personal.
But the point is, I got this Sound Design 2, and it was the first time that it really made sense to me. I recorded some records in there, and instead of sampling and working on this tiny little screen and adjusting the markers and finding programming, I was like, I could see the waveforms on the screen, and I could chop and edit and move things. And back then, because it wasn't multi-track, you would tell it, okay, go from here to here, play loop A first. So you'd make these loop points, and then loop B and loop C, and I was basically doing these re-edits.
Sampler.
Sound Designer 2, yeah, it's a Pro Tools program.
Sure.
And it just, all of a sudden, that's really when it started clicking for me. Like, I can see the waveform, I can get this in front of me, and I can make re-edits of these records that I love.
Right.
And I mean, initially it was very, like, rudimentary remixing, really.
Right.
And that's kind of how it started for me. And then at that point I was addicted, and then I just like put everything I got into it. But then when the multi-track, I remember the first thing I bought in Pro Tools, it came out, I think it was 4 or 6 tracks. And I was like, but you can bounce down. I'm like, Motown was started on less than this, man. They had like 12 tracks or whatever it was. And I'm like, this is infinite. I could just keep going. I could come up with an idea and bounce it down, bounce it down. So that was really kind of the beginning.
Very interesting. So this is, I think we'll stay on this for a little bit. How has that progressed from, you mentioned some pretty, I don't want to call it traditional, but the sampling systems, and then into Pro Tools. You mentioned the Roland gear, the 808s and the 909s still being used today, I believe. How has that studio from then changed? I mean, what is this? I'm sure a lot of you guys are out there making music. So, can you share with us what your studio looks like now?
Yes. Well, I'll give you a little bit of history because I think it's interesting. And I just moved into a brand new studio, so the timing of this is great. I'm going through this whole like cleansing process. Like, what do I need? What don't I need in here? What am I actually using? For me, in the beginning, it was a bunch of boxes: Juno 106, synths, Jupiter, just everything I could get my hands on. Secondhand shops, friends. Whatever, so 808, 909, all these different, electronic instruments, kind of stringing them together and syncing it up and recording them. Fast forward, okay, I moved to San Francisco. This is how that first cleanse went. I moved to San Francisco, and I'm like, here's the apartment I can afford, and here's all my gear. And this is at the time that Reason came out. It was like kind of coincided with moving to San Francisco, and the gear and Reason sounded pretty convincing to me at the time. I was like, man, this is freaking crazy. This 909 and Rebirth sounds.
Right.
This thing's going for $2,000 on eBay, and like I can't eat.
You can just figure out how to wire the back of it.
Right. So I'm like, maybe I should sell this gear and invest. And I couldn't fit the gear in my apartment. For the first 4 months I lived in San Francisco, the stuff sat in a storage unit. And so anyway, I tried to convince my wife, like, no, it's cool, we don't need a front room. I could just make this whole place the studio. It'd be awesome. We could sleep under the desk. We get a futon, it'll fold out right out. But I'll be making records. It'll be cool.
I'm sure she's happy that you did that.
Anyway, I sold a lot of that stuff and kind of got into the more digital side of things. And now, I mean, I just gave my tower to a friend, and I've actually switched to this next record will be fully done on a laptop. I mean, even though the laptop will be plugged into a Pro Tools system, I'll get the processing of that. I mean, just the power of the personal computer has completely changed it. I mean, I'm sad. I love the vintage stuff. Don't get me wrong. I still have a Rhodes sitting in my studio. I really want the real thing, but I think for where I'm at, it's just not. You know, if I want the real thing, I can rent it for a week or whatever. Call a friend over, he brings it over.
So, you know, if you are moving towards a laptop, what's the main, you know, DAW? What's the main system that you're? Is it Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools?
I'm a Pro Tools guy, and I've stuck with Pro Tools since 2000.
Lots of Pro Tools fans out there?
I like to hear that. That makes me very happy. And the 10 years that I was in San Francisco is awesome because I drive down to Daly City and like throw high fives with all the guys at the office there and be like, "What's up, man? I use your gear all the time. Can I get some plugins?"
See, this is how it works. It's got to make connections. How about you, Steve? How's your studio progressed from what would be considered the early days to what's your production flow right now?
The early days, I didn't have much because I was always using my friend's stuff. But the first thing I got was a Juno 106 and a Nord lead. And I was working out of, the DIMAC office, which actually is just a block south of Amoeba. And we would work out of there. And eventually we moved offices over to Kenmore and Hollywood. And it used to be a floral shop. So we took over the refrigerator and turned that into the studio, which sounded like shit, but you know, it worked for what it was. You know, I was just doing remixes, and I mean, everything was already in the box. We were already working out of my laptop already to begin with, and using Ableton back then.
Shout out for Ableton.
However.
However, we've got Pro Tools and we've got Ableton.
Yeah, I didn't go the Pro Tools route, but eventually when I moved into my house, which was like 3 years ago, I turned one room into a studio. And in that studio, that's when I switched over from Ableton to Logic.
So we've covered
I feel like there's more Pro Tools here than Logic, and we could do like a battle with... How many Logic users?
All right, what's up, Pro Tools users? Right here. Okay, let's meet outside and fight.
Now let's put that on Google, whatever. You know, that would be hilarious.
So
my setup now is very simple. You know, I just use a MIDI keyboard and Logic, and I don't have much of anything. I still have like my synths, you know, racked up. They're almost like trophies or like wall ornaments at this point. I can't get rid of them. I want to keep them around. They look beautiful, but I don't use them. I mean, to be honest, I don't use them at all.
So many of the software programs have a lot of the 808s and the 909s. Even after Reason, they've got so good now, haven't they? So tell me, again, this is for both of you, because clearly you're on the road a lot, and you've both got home studios, and I'm sure there's other studios, like larger scale studios that you use. Describe for me the process, because do you make music when you're on the road? And if you do, is that the laptop and then back to the studio, or do you finish tracks when you're out there on the road? Or do you want to start with that one, Kaskade?
I do.
Okay.
I think the dream is to be able to do it all.
Do it all.
Make it on the road, come back in, get in the studio and do it. And I carry a laptop around, and I have a Pro Tools. I mean, ever since they went just to the dongle, this is like a huge deal for me because I used to carry the unbox around. I don't get a ton done on the road, honestly. I don't, because it's like
focused
there's
on the
barely
shows.
enough time to sleep, let alone like, hey man, I've got this brilliant idea. This chord progression's awesome. Let me just hold on. Like, you know, there's just, I mean, you're running around from place to place. But there are little slivers of time, and I've, you know, I started doing a radio show a little ways back. I don't do it anymore, but I did it in Ableton, and I found like, oh, this is a really quick, cool way. Oh, what these two records match up together. So I started messing around with it more over the years. But always the computers, the laptops just weren't. I feel like until the last like 2-3 years, it was really difficult. This last tour, I got a few ideas done, worked on some remixes, but it is just, I mean, the majority of my stuff is done after I get little ideas, you know? It's like I can only take it so far on the road.
I think that we get this impression, a lot of bands, they have obligations to their label to get a certain amount of albums or songs done, and if they're on a touring schedule, do you kind of beat, you know, sort of, you know, are you driving to your own beat, so to speak? Is it your own schedule of when you do releases, or like if you've got a creative idea, you just get on with it? Or, I mean, touring, you're on the road a lot, obviously. So is the album something you do when you're back and settled, or how does that process work?
So when I start a new album, like I'm just getting into a new record now, it's like I open up my laptop and I look at like, okay, cool, I've got 30, 40 ideas here that I've started on the road. Some of them might be 30 seconds, some of them might be 3 minutes long. And I kind of just like put them in different folders, like, oh, this is interesting, this is not quite as interesting, this sucks, you know.
It's probably still good though.
But more of it happens. But for me, I don't have any obligation to,
right.
I mean, for me, the deal that I'm in with the record label, Ultra Records, is very, I mean, I do what I want.
Deliver money.
So,
well, that's a that's where you want to be. Now, Steve, you again, you know, you're on the road a lot. I've bumped into both of you, and definitely Steve this season in Ibiza, and it seems like when I'm following your tweets, you're always at a show in a different city, and so again, you know, you've got your own label. Are you marching to your own drum on your release schedules, and how does that work for you?
Oh, well, I of course try to start producing on the road. I mean, we have so much downtime on airplanes that you think that time would be perfect for writing music, when eventually I just realized I could sleep actually. So yeah, that was difficult. I tried, but I didn't really get anywhere. And I'm with you on that. It's like you want to use that downtime, because we do get downtime when we actually land in that city and you have that space of time before you play the show. But it's really difficult. And I feel like the best time, I mean, I went on 2 different bus tours in the last year and a half. And both the bus tours, that's when I brought out my rig. I just brought, like, you know, it's not much, you know. So I brought it out, and I would just kind of renegade the green rooms, because we would get in at like 12 o'clock. And I was able to finish some, like Wonderland, my album that came out the beginning January of this year. I was able to finish a few of the main concepts around these songs, not the mixes, but the main concepts around, like Earthquakey People, the sequel, Lottie Dottie. A lot of these songs I was able to finish on that Identity tour I was on with Ryan. So
did any of you catch those shows? Yeah. Sure you did.
in that space, it was more organized. The bus tour seemed to work.
Right.
And on the last bus tour I did, I was able to be really creative. This time I didn't really. I was more working with other people that were on the road with me. So me and Datsik worked on some stuff, because we're on the same bus together for 60 days. And then, you know, people that came on the road, like me and Dirty Phonics, we were like jamming out. Like, I wish it was recorded, because we're jamming out. Like, we had like 4 computers out. Everyone's working on different parts. You know, like there's a MIDI keyboard. We're all jumping on. They're all like going back to back. Like, no, try this. No, try this. That kind of spirit it's so much fun. So there's a lot of collaborative spirit happening on the last bus tour I did, and I wrote a lot of stuff on the bus tour. A lot of it's coming out now,
Very cool.
in the next couple of months.
I look forward to that. So do you, when you're bringing a rig like that, are you bringing an engineer, or is that something that you guys do, as producers, DJs, are you engineers, and do you do everything? Or do you have people that you say, okay, well, here's something, here's an engineer that can polish up something, my idea that I have, and how does that work?
On this one, no, I didn't bring anyone besides like another DJ would come out. We did like Anger Dimas from Indonesia came out. We did like 3 records together. So that was something that I was collaborating on. As far as final mixing on Wonderland, I gave it to this guy that actually mastered my album. So he did the final mix and the master, because I wasn't 100% sure about my mix on on the whole album, and I wanted it to be mixed outside of my world, outside of my headspace, and hear it again. And I think it was one of the wisest decisions I'd made for the album.
Give yourself a little space from what you're hearing. And Kaskade, there's been some, I think that you mentioned on one of your shows that you have been mastering. You're mixing and mastering your own tracks.
Mixing and mastering. I work with Mike Ross Kelly's mastered my last, mixed and mastered my last 7 albums, all of them.
Right.
He's somebody that I obviously feel very comfortable with. I get the sound that I'm looking for. As far as engineering, it depends on the budget of the project, really.
They must be getting bigger.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. Some of these times, people they want to for a remix, or even cutting vocals. It's nice to have an engineer in there, because I feel like, okay, cool, I can man the controls and be concerned about. Well, I'll tell a funny little story. Perry Farrell came over and he's like, "Man, I love your music. Let's make some music." And I was like, "Dude, I'm a huge Jane's Addiction fan. I mean, I'm this guy." When he walked out, I was like, "Oh my God!"
Anybody else like Jane's Addiction?
Anyway, it was like, it was literally like I forgot where record was. I flipped the chair around. I was like, "Wait, how do you hold it, man? Just one second." Like, it took a minute. Anyway, but in vocal sessions, I find that when I have an engineer, it's cool because I can actually sit and listen to the performance.
Sure.
And I can sit back and I can be like, "Yeah, that's cool. This is the take I want, whatever." But I can take it. So, but that's not every time, Sure. I mean, obviously, if I could afford an engineer every time, I could be a little bit lazy and kick back and be like, "Yeah, dude, help me record these vocals."
So, I'm sure both of you have a lot of people who would like to work with you, and do you have a selection process? Do you say, have a little short list of people that you want to work with? I'm sure, but how does it work when both of you have had collaborative projects and choosing a vocalist, choosing an artist to work with? Is that something that just happens naturally, or do you seek it, or do they seek you and then you say yes, we or decide by committee? How does that work? Okay, Skye, do you want to?
Up until now, mainly I just hit up friends.
Right.
Or friends of friends. Somebody's like, "Dude, you gotta check this girl out. She's amazing. She's on this compilation. She's whatever, a babysitter. She's making $20 an hour, dude. Like, you can get this girl, or whatever." So it's like even the Neon Trees.
There's hope.
Have you gotten a babysitter to sing on?
Yes, I have.
Singers out there.
I'm not going to tell you who, but yes. I mean, and even the Neon Trees collaboration, Brandon, the bass player, was somebody that I'd met years ago, and I was just like, "Hey, man, you guys want to do a song together?" I mean, it was pretty natural. Now I hit people up, like Skylar Gray. I looked her up. I was just like, "Man, this girl's voice is amazing, and her stylistically and even the way she writes songs is very similar to how I write songs." I'm like, this is a perfect match. I got to find this girl. And when I rung her up, it was like, "Hey, I'm 5 blocks away from where you live. You want to come to my studio? I'm not creepy, I swear."
If Kaskade's on the phone, is he creepy? I think you probably passed that one. So I mean, yeah, you basically, it sounds like a very natural process then, and it sounds like you'll you'll give not anybody, but you'll give people a chance if they've got a great voice, and it's not just about names.
For me, I'm looking for people that are fun and cool to work with and want to make interesting music, and that sound different. I'm very specific. When I grew up in Chicago, everyone was doing this I don't know, like this gospel house sound. I was like, man, that's cool, but everyone's doing that. I don't want to do that. So I was looking for something different, and I just always wanted to kind of find my own way. But it's changed. I mean, I just School of Seven Bells. I love their album Ghost Story, and like I literally just 2-3 days ago, I just tweeted at him like, hey man, could I get a follow back? I'm a huge fan, and like I'd love to collaborate on something. And enough people like retweeted, and so my fans were fans of theirs too, and I was like, dude, this dude's for real. You should check him out. And now I'm speaking with him. Whether something comes of it or not, I have no idea. But it's just things have changed.
Well, that's actually very interesting for all of us. You reached out to somebody through Twitter, and before we get into the social media stuff, because I would like to talk about that. Steve, how do you go about your selection of artists, collaborations, and things like that?
It's also very organic. It's with Wonderland. It was definitely, I mean, first of all, I live in LA, which helps a lot. So, I mean, if you look at the cast of characters on the album, a lot of these people actually live here. I mean, a lot of people you would never expect are LA locals, like will.i.am, LMFAO, Travis Barker, Little John, Rivers Cuomo.
No name dropping again. This is just the world that we're in right now.
Black Star, K, or like they'll come through LA, or they, Chidi Bane came on tour, played a show in LA, came earlier the day. I played him the beat. I mean, some of these people are really that fast. They came in and rocked their verses right there. And
do you do some of this remote? Is this like are you in the studio, or are you side by side, or do you? I remember hearing, Bowie and Jagger didn't meet when they did, Under Pressure, a bunch of songs that artists collaborate through the internet. Do you do internet collaborations, or?
Yes, I do. But for the most part, I'd say like 80% of the artists that were on the album were in the studio, and because I have a small vocal booth, and then I have my control room, or whatever you want to call it. And I've had, like Cuddy there, and Travis's studio. A lot of these guys' studios are really close by. Like Travis is like in Studio City. Right. I'm not gonna tell you exactly where.
Address, please.
And Red Foo Studio is like literally down the street around the corner. So it's so
you get a chance to actually just the choice is to get together.
But it's as easy. It's also easy just to have, like, Rivers did his vocals in his studio and send them back to me. will.i.am was doing his vocals at, I think, the record plant. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's like, it's nowadays you don't need to be. Right. You could be mobile. You could be anywhere and do it.
So I mean, with the that leads us into the social media. The use of computers is obviously so integral with every part of what you're doing right now. I follow both of you on Twitter, and I almost feel like I know you. I'm sure a lot of our audience out here are following you two on Twitter. I'm assuming it looks like you're both doing your own tweets, and is it true? Yes. Is someone else doing it?
Well, I'll be honest. I've done every single tweet except the last one. And my manager. Where's my manager? Where is he? He left. Anyway,
I heard this story before.
I wanted people to know about this. So I was like, I don't have time. Can you give us a mat to tweet out that me and Kaskade are here, so they can jump on the Google Plus and watch us talk?
Kaskade, you're doing your own tweets?
I do 99% of my own tweets, which, if you follow me on Twitter, it's very obvious that I do my own tweets.
Right.
Nobody is. That's my guy right there.
Yeah, he's Matt sent out.
Manager, Matt.
But if I have somebody, sometimes there's like a news thing that I want to send out that I'm getting on a plane, can you do this type of deal or whatever.
Sure.
But they definitely put like management or news or whatever, and it's just some sterile thing like, hey, he's on Google Plus right now, check it out. Management,
So, well, it's refreshing to hear that you are just naturally using the social media. How much of it do you strategize that? Is that something that you even think about, or do you just naturally have your own rhythm with this type of social media exposure, and how does that work for you? Do you think about these things? Go ahead, Steve.
For me, it's almost like little. When you throw up in your mouth a little bit.
No.
It's kind of like that sometimes, where I'm just like throwing up all the time, and I have something that. I mean, it's a little excessive. I feel bad for people following me that have to deal with my timeline because I'm really talking just. Like I'll go on a green tea high, I'll drink like mad green tea, and I'll just be like, like saying total fucking shit. Like
beep.
When I get bored, I'll like just get on there and just bug people like Kaskade and hope they
terrorizing people. Kaskade, I think you're more controlled than this, aren't you?
Most of the time, but sometimes I'll go on a tyrant.
Okay, hold on a second. This is the guy.
I love them. Actually, I like them. I'm like, yeah.
I just want to, for me, I want to stress the importance of what social media is for me. Listen.
This is the guy that caused a riot. Remember that.
It's good to be back in Hollywood. All right.
Oh, we're gonna
take out that high five part. Edit that. That was bad, man. That was really bad.
We were gonna have another one today, actually.
For me, I feel like Twitter, and before Facebook, I felt it was like this too. It's like a direct interaction with the fans. Not so much now Facebook. I don't know what's going on. It's changed. It's just now I feel like my pages. I used to get on there and just talk to people all the time. And this is something I do in my downtime because I feel like it's really cool to interact with the people that have got me to this place. I mean, I'm not on a major label. My marketing budget for the next 5 years is what, some of these guys like the Swedes that are on majors is what their marketing budget is for tomorrow, So it's like a very different model. I have to speak to my fans directly.
You're keeping it real.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting. It's like they ask great questions. They know what I'm talking about, and a lot of people on there really follow me and keep up to date. So for me, I find it very rewarding to go on there and like speak directly to people.
How often is someone lucky enough to get a retweet from you?
I mean, I retweet certain things. I'm like, okay, if you have lyrics that I wrote on your body, I'll retweet it. All right. But the birthday ones, because people are always like, tons of birthdays. Fan. I'm always like, yeah, I can't retweet all you guys. But the thing is so I think people are surprised when I'm like sitting there waiting in line to get on a plane. There's all these like little slivers of time that you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. And it's like, it doesn't make sense to whip out a book right there, but I can get on Twitter and just read what's on my stream, and I read what people are saying.
Yeah, it's timing. It's definitely timing. Yes. It's like you have to be reading at that moment. Makes you laugh. Like for me, if I'm laughing out loud, LOL, that shit makes me laugh out loud. I'm gonna retweet it. Like that's just a general rule of thumb. Funny, weird picture.
I've seen Steve using Twitter as like Yelp, though. He's like, I've just landed here. Where can I find some noodles?
Hey, I actually use that. I mean, I'm asking him like, hey, man, if you're in, Winnetka Falls, whatever the fuck, I don't know where to go. Can you tell me something?
Well, so you can see how this is, guys. You can actually speak to your artists directly. It's what a time we live in.
And in the best noodle shop, the best noodle shops are really important.
Please put a list together of noodle shops for Steve. Okay, so let's get back into your shows. Tell me, with the sort of the growth of, say, this EDM movement, the shows have got bigger and the productions have got bigger. And tell me a little bit about your live show, because it's not just getting up there and putting a record on and looking at the crowd anymore. You've got a show, right? So the visuals, tell us a bit about how that's grown for you.
Yeah, my most recent tour, the Freaks of Nature tour that I'm just finished recently here, I don't know, a month ago, whatever. When I did ID tour with Steve last summer, 2011, that was the first kind of time I dabbled into, okay, I need to add a lot more production to what's going on here. And then I just I learned a lot on that tour, used what I learned, came back for this tour and just kind of honed in and perfected it more, which I'll continue to do. But there's a huge challenge as an electronic musician or artist, whatever, because people want to see something on stage. It's very difficult to just get up there and throw a card table up and DJ.
Right.
I don't think.
Do you help come up with the ideas for the visuals, or?
Yeah, for me, it was very important when I collaborated with these people about coming up with a theme for what the tour was going to look like and what the show is going to look like. Of course, I mean, this is my music. I'd written so many of these lyrics, the concepts that people are singing along to. I'm like, look, man, this song's about this. It needs to have this kind of feeling, emotion. The lighting, I think, should look like this. What do you think? You're a lighting professional. Okay, the visuals need to look something. You need to be floating at this point, dude. What do you, what's going to make you feel like floating? So, so it's I work closely with these people to try and come up with a show that's congruent with the music.
So we're not expecting any weird helmets or ears or anything like this.
This is an ingenious idea. I mean, Deadmau5, that's part of his brilliance for sure.
Steve, same question, I guess. The visual aspect of your show, how's that grown?
Yeah, actually, Kaskade is talking about the Identity Tour, and it allowed him to do his production. It was same with me. It was a bus tour for all of us, so we got to plan and prepare production. We had, I know for me, I had I had a bus, and then I had a semi-truck rig carrying my production, which is something that we're developing for months with a team that put it together. And it's got to speak with the music. It's got to be complementary to the music. Using some of the music video imagery, but also you don't want it to be a music video playing behind you the whole time. His visuals are crazy.
Right.
When I saw Identity show, I was like, well, you fucking did it, man. Your shit was on fire.
Thank you.
Because when I listen to him, I'm just like, my arms are already in the air. I don't realize it. But yeah, so production is a big part. When you think about dance music, when you're at a festival alongside tens of thousands of people, and you're staring up there and you see the DJ is this small, he or she is just a small piece of the whole experience. The lights, the story playing through the visuals, the people around you, that mastered pristine quality recording. It's all about the sound, of course. You're going there for the music, so you're going there. It's opposite seeing a band. The way I see it, it's like when you go see a band, you want to see them fuck up a little bit, fuck around, raw energy. When you go see a DJ, you want to hear the most pristine, the best quality, pumping in your bloodstream. You want to feel that and see it, and the DJ is just literally 10% of it at that point. So the whole thing is the experience. So when you have a crazy production, you can really change, and influence a lot more than just playing.
But I think it has to go. There's a lot to be said on this subject, but I would like to say, look, I've had some amazing moments with DJs, and I've played some amazing parties and had some amazing moments with people listening to my music in a warehouse in San Francisco with 300 people and one light bulb flickering. So as much as the visual element and all this is important, I think in the press and in the media, I've been disappointed because they portray it as something that people are there for that aspect. And what I've been shouting this from the rooftops for my entire professional career. It's the music that drives us here at the end of the day. So like I get disappointed when I see in the media they try and play it off as a fad or like they're here because of the screens or whatever. I'm like, oh man, they still don't get it. You know?
Amen to that. Okay, so obviously some great shows and an amazing tour for both of you. Is there one specific moment when you could remember looking out, whether it was a spectacular show or if it was something that was that one party with one light bulb? Is there a moment that defined when you realized yourself that this is it, I've arrived at where I want to be? Can you remember that moment? It's every day, right?
I don't think I had that one kind of
there wasn't a Coachella moment where you stood
like an
there.
Avicii moment or where like Levels came out and I was like, I'm touring the world. I never really honestly, I don't think I've had great moments along my way, my ride here, but I don't think I had like one particular experience that really propelled me. Like I didn't put out that one song and it just went. My thing has been like this, and this is very appropriate in front of this audience. I mean, you guys, I've been DJing for over 20 years. I'm 41 years old. I bought my first record when I was 15, and my incline has been like this. It's been like, hey, I played for you for $200. I'll come back for $200 and a cheeseburger. All right, man. And then like it's been like this thing that's it's been a real steady and slow progression.
Amazing career, and so much more ahead. Steve, it's a defining moment, one of those moments where you look out over the sunset and Cafe Del Mar or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could say a million shows,
right?
Plus, I mean, it's just so many of them are so important. I feel like every one of them is important, small and big. They're all meaningful. I feel like the connection is there between the music that I'm playing, myself, and the crowd. If that connection is authentic and real, then it's like a great show for me.
In getting close to wrapping this up, I know we could go on forever. I could at least. How about some words of advice and some inspiration for some of these people here and online? Thank you to our online community for tuning in. Let's, if you can, if someone out here is a producer or at that stage that we talked about your career early on, and they're looking for just that little push, what would you say to them right now? Is there some advice?
I mean, if you truly love what you're doing, continue to do it. Push yourself, get better, find out more, learn more, go into other sessions, learn what other guys are doing, go back, take that knowledge back to your home, and just continually be improving. I mean, for me, like I said, it's been a very slow, steady climb to the place that I'm at now. I wouldn't have changed any of it. I mean, when I was broke in San Francisco and like flying to Winter Music Conference and living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, all those moments were important, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. And I knew that I was doing what I loved, so it never seemed like a sacrifice to me. I was like, man, I'm in Miami. This is awesome. What's up? I can't eat tomorrow, but this is sweet, So it's like, if you're doing what you love, just keep at it. I mean, I tell people, figure out what you really love and just do that. Do it and keep doing it.
Great. And Steve. Some words of inspiration from the man.
I 100% agree. It's all about what defines you as a person and bringing that out, because everyone comes with different life experiences. We all come from different places, and you could bring that into your creation, into your music, into your art, and it's important to bring that out. And it's all about being authentic with what you're expressing. And as long as it's organic and it's real and it's true to you, then express that. If you want to do experimental noise, be the best experimental noise artist that you can be. If you want to be a progressive house artist, do that. You know, it's what drives you is what is going to make you become the best.
Well, we've got some questions. Let's go a round of applause, please. And I believe, Daniel, we have some questions from the online community. Is that how it works? And how are they gonna? Do they just come through here? Okay, so Chicago, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey.
Hello there.
Hey, how's it going?
So, can we have? Do you have a question?
Yeah. The first one was going to be for Steve. What's it been like working with so many artists that typically don't work within the EDM genre, such as Rivers Cuomo and Iggy Azalea? Is there any like learning curve for them within the studio, or do they just kind of hop right in?
Well, when I'm writing the tracks, like for example with Rivers, I wrote that track like particularly for him. So I was hoping that it would kind of bridge, you know, from my world to his world in a way that he could actually do something that makes sense to him. Wait, should I be looking there? Or with Iggy, she's very specific. I played her for a couple of different beats, and then I played her the beat down instrumental. And I mean, it's got to make sense for the artist if they want to work on that track. So when I played her that record, it was you know, it just kind of, you know, she was able to like think about how to process that in her world, and yeah, I'm happy that it worked out because it's one of my favorite records to play.
Do you have a question for Kaskade?
Yeah. We just want to know how you've managed to keep your signature sound throughout the years, even as electronic music has changed so drastically, and how you've still maintained such a huge fan base by doing what you have enjoyed.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad that you say that, because some people are like, man, Kaskade sold out in '95. I don't know, dude. This stuff he's making in 2012, this is garbage.
Not true.
So it's cool to hear you say that. I think for me, picking people to collaborate with that are like-minded, I consider myself like a songwriter, so I think that thread of the themes that I've been writing about and stylistically how I write is kind of carried through the 7 albums. Even if it's like, oh, it's a down-tempo track or it's a house track, it's like, oh man, I'm still writing about love, or it's a similar theme, or stylistically you can tell like, oh, this came from that guy. So no matter how you produce it, if it's a good song, it'll stick out, and I think that's carried through.
That was a great question and great answers. San Francisco, we're moving on to San Francisco. Hello, San Francisco.
Hey.
Hello.
I got a question for Ryan.
A question for Kaskade. Awesome.
Kaskade, pardon.
Ryan Kaskade.
Well, you know, his name is Ryan.
Do it.
But, yeah. Question?
How much of a role do you think the audience plays in dictating what kind of tracks you produce?
How tracks what?
Like, the audience, like, okay. How much of a role do you think the audience plays in dictating what kind of tracks you release? What artists?
I mean, I have a relationship with my audience, so for sure that's helped like mold me as the person I am and as the artist I am. Because when I first was writing songs, one of the first singles I put out, "It's You, It's Me," back in 2002, this was like, oh man, in San Francisco, like, this is a big room record, dude. Why are you doing that? But by today's standards, this is deep house. You know, they're like, oh, that's so big. It's big room, dude. That's lame. So I'm just saying, I think, but if you compare that song to, say, something off of Fire and Ice, although there's some similarity, I think playing all these shows over the years, hundreds if not thousands of shows, has changed me as a person and affected how I produce the material. Because back then in San Francisco in 2000, playing a big room was 300 people at a lounge, and now playing a big room is here in Staples Center. So
Staples Center. Do you have a question for Steve?
This one's sort of for both of you.
Okay.
I feel as though music is evolving faster than ever before. Does this ever play a role in your creative process?
Yeah, of course it does. It's like, I mean, I agree with you. We're at that, I always say we're at the kind of exponential curve. Everything is kind of evolving and changing faster than it ever has, and the way we're discovering about music, accessing it, has completely changed from from when I was growing up, for sure. Because I found out about music through outside of my own little hardcore world. I was finding out music through TV and radio, and that was basically it. There was no real internet. So it's the way we're discovering music, the way we're producing music, the way in which we are producing music, where we don't need the big studios anymore. We can produce songs that affect globally with the computer and small speakers. It's just accessing that information and putting it into your production is, for me, it's changed me a lot as a producer. I'm producing not just straight four on the floor electro as much as I am, dabbling with Moombahton or dubstep or other productions that I'm playing in my sets already.
Right. We have time for one more question, one last question. Do you guys have one last question? Make it a good one.
Can we hear?
Otherwise, we'll take one.
Answer to that question, or?
No. Do you have one more question?
About what do you guys think about the term EDM? Because I know that there's a lot of controversy between the use of that term between the old school guys and the
Gone from electronica to well, it's a few different names now. So
I mean, I have no problem with it, just because when you're speaking to people that don't know about the music, when I'm speaking to a fellow person in the scene or that understands and listens to this music, I refer to the whatever it is, house, dubstep, whatever, techno, we refer to it as what it actually is. But listen, there's like a million different genres in this world. It's cool somebody came up with the term EDM, so now I can say that to like the newspaper guy who's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I make EDM, man.
Okay, so this is where I get to thank the Grammys. Thank you, the Grammys, for putting this together. Thank you. Thank you, Grammy U. And thank you, the audience. Give yourselves a hand. The staff who put this together. Erin, Daniel, Paul, Lizzie, everybody who's made this, and of course this location and the people who have helped with this. And also I'd like to thank the online community, and then last but not least, I would like to thank Steve and Ryan.